Founded in 1999 by Jason Burks, Retrospec Films is Oklahoma's largest turnkey production company of its kind. With over 2 decades of experience, a full-time team of over 20 talented individuals, a 12,000 square foot studio to create in, and thousands of successfully completed projects in both entertainment and advertising. You're in the right place if you like hearing some good old filmmaking stories. On this podcast, we will discuss the pursuit of creating things and the problems we solve by digging up projects from across the last 20 years and giving you a glimpse behind the scenes where the magic happens. You're listening to Retrospec Films from the archives.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today on Retrospec from the Archives, our new podcast series where we talk about the pursuit of creating things as well as the problems we solve here at Retrospec Films. Join with me today is director, cinematographer, actor Jacob Hightower the Fourth.
No, just the first.
My bad. Okay,
yeah, it's okay.
And Adam Vigil, editor, cinematographer, director, and what other hobbies you got?
I've been known as the Michael Jordan of extras.
Oh, yeah. So there you go. The Michael Jordan of extras. And we today are going to be discussing, we are bringing back a project from a few years ago called Rise. And this was a really, really fun project. Brandon Forbes, who I didn't introduce, but he is very significant in this one. Brandon, would you wave at your camera, please?
Hello.
This is a project that would have never existed without his actual personal problem called video gaming.
Okay, see, it's not a problem.
I'm sorry. Isn't it? It's a sport, right?
Yes.
It's an It's a
esports, you know?
Yeah, esports.
And you're an athlete.
You're a gaming athlete.
Yeah, there you go.
work out your fingers.
Yes, exactly. It's very difficult. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm not going to lie, my participation in this is for the love of filmmaking. I have yet to really win much more than a game of Halo back in 2003. So since then, the gaming community has more or less banned me from their presence. So I just came on board. But, you know, I don't really have a whole lot of a good way to introduce this thing because I don't know much about games. So I think I should just hand it over to Forbes. Forbes, why don't you set it up better?
Well, at the time, I mean, there was this streamer, his name was Ninja, very popular, like breaking all sorts of numbers, charts and stuff, playing this new game that had come out. And I was like, this would be a really cool opportunity to try to get like a hold of him and his team before he blows up and maybe do some sort of docuseries on streaming gaming following him specifically. And so I just randomly sent an email to his wife was his manager at the time, to her email that was listed in her Twitter handle, and she emailed back and was interested. And so we hopped on multiple phone calls and Zooms with his talent his talent agency. And over the course of a couple months, it was like this company of Oklahoma reaching out and saying that we want to do this. They're kind of a little skeptical, which I understand. And so it all kind of came to a head when there was this Ninja Vegas event that they were going to be hosting, where he's going to come in, they're going to rent out this esports arena that's at the Luxor in Vegas. It's all going to be centered around him. People are going to be playing against him, competing. And they said, listen, if you come out, we'll give you all access. You can create a sizzle, something, and that will show us that you guys are competent and know what you're doing. And then, we can fully discuss like what a docuseries would look like. And so that, Jason, you said, obviously you don't have a ton to say or care about, but I mean, the fact that you were willing to basically for 3 or 4 days, drive us, use all the gear. And this was a non-paid endeavor. This was us trying to invest in what could potentially be an awesome relationship and turn into something larger. And so we said, okay, Ninja Vegas was happening. And so, we packed our bags and headed to Vegas.
And just to get a scope of Ninja, for those who have no clue, do we have any, when he was at the height of who he was, Forbes, how would you describe his influence, his audience?
I don't think I have the numbers in front of me right now, but it was like on average every day, it would be at least anywhere from like 80,000 to 120,000 people watching him live for 8 hours a day.
Which is crazy.
Which is wild. Like that audience and that pull and reach that he had. That's why I was like, there's something there. Like he has there, and it's, you know, and that was a couple of years ago when still, you know, and there still is a stigma with gaming and, you know, just the type of people that do that, who just couch potatoes, sit at home, you know, live with their mom until they're 50.
Cheetos, basements.
Yeah, exactly.
Carpal tunnel.
But you can create a career out of this if you know what you're doing and are good at it. And I was like, I think there's a story to tell here. You know, it's not climbing, but I think we ended up attaching a climbing trip onto the end of the trip.
Whatever.
But that's another podcast. So yeah.
Well, let's see. So where shall we start the story? I do think it's interesting to know, without, you know, spoiler alert here, but that we did not end up creating the series. However, in the creation of this sizzle, we had a really good time getting to work with Ninja directly, getting to work with his wife. I got to do interviews with them both, working with Myth, another huge gamer, a whole lot of people in that industry working with the Luxor. So it was a really good experience because at that time in this company's history, we were really aiming at ideas to launch ourselves into entertainment. And it was a little bit of a foreshadowing because in the last year, we worked on 3 or 4 projects in the entertainment space, which is tremendous for us. But back at this time, you know, it was just kind of this crazy thought of what could be. Why don't I hand it off? Let's see. Which one of you two feels like you're ready to talk about something in this project? I kind of can't decide if we should take it from the loading the truck to the driving 18 hours to Las Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about taking it sequentially to where we loaded up, right?
We did.
So that was a big endeavor because we knew it's going to be like an 8 to 10 day trip, round trip.
Yep.
We can't forget anything. You forget something, you can't just drive back to Tulsa from Vegas. You can't really, I mean, you can ship things, but we don't want to do that.
Right.
So, you know, the big push on getting everything that we think we could use for this shoot, and then on top of that, the next shoot, I loaded down the back of the truck so tight that we could barely get our like luggage in there.
Yeah.
And, you know, just dealing with that, moving from location to location, having to unpack, pack. It's a thing. It's you know, it can be grueling.
I feel like it's almost worth like a little pause and a bullet point there because we talk about the problems we solve. And it's funny in filmmaking, you know, I don't really know what people think we do, actually. I really just don't know because this is all I've ever done. But I do know that sometimes we make jokes and I'm like, oh, we're just overpaid movers, you know, because like, I mean, in reality, there's so much equipment. And it's funny, I think, you know, not to get on some tangent of the characteristics that I like to bring together in a team, but I do feel like there is such a strong connection between the equipment that you use, your ability to know how to use it, and your willingness to actually bring it and use it. Mm-hmm. And I know that sounds funny, but you know as much as I do that like every little piece of equipment, every little light, every little camera control, motion stabilizer, so on and so on and so on and so on, will help you create a better image. And if you're just too lazy to bring all those things, you don't use them and your stuff doesn't turn out as good. And I will say that's something that we don't do. Maybe it's a pain in the butt because we have so much equipment all the time. But I think this trip was a unique one in that we knew we didn't want to drive with the trailer because of the gas mileage. Because we're just doing this on our own dime. So we're like, let's fit it all in the truck. But then knowing that we're going to create something that hopefully is epic, and we know it's for a nationally, internationally recognized, A-list celebrity, but trying to find the happy medium. And so that gear packing, I mean, not to embellish it all down to the art of gear packing, but it's a thing.
Yeah, I mean, you won't use it if you don't bring it.
It's true. You can't use it.
But you don't want to bring too much because then you might be overwhelmed and not use anything.
It's true.
So there's this fine balance, and it is problem solving in its finest, So
we hit the road. Adam, why don't you pick it up from there?
Well, it's kind of funny. I was thinking about, I had this memory the other day So at the time, Brandon and I used to office together, and Brandon would always have Ninja streaming Fortnite on his computer, just playing in the background while he was working.
You mean posters on his wall? He had posters.
I had
Sort of.
posters, signed posters.
And he had bumper stickers.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And you had
Yeah,
the
yeah.
underwear with him on it.
Yeah, I had the life-size cardboard cutout
There
right
we
when you
go.
walk in the office.
He
Sorry.
had lots of memorabilia. I just remember thinking like, oh, who is that? And then to think that like one day we would actually be going there and doing something with it was super cool. But so yeah, we hit the road. This was super interesting for me because this was actually, I think, looking back, one of my first long trips with Retrospec. I had only been there for maybe 6 months at the time. And so pairing, like we said, there was a second shoot tacked onto this one. We'll go into more detail later, but pairing these two big trips together was really fun and something I was looking forward to. And I was brought in obviously to help out with, grip stuff and miscellaneous, anywhere I could. But my primary objective was to shoot behind the scenes. So I kind of got an interesting look on not just the actual project that we were there to do, but you guys making it and walking up and being like, "Hi, Tyler, what are you doing right now?" Like, I'm loading the truck and I'm getting all this and that. And so for me, it was an interesting trip because it was kind of not just a crash course on this specific project, but it was a crash course on how Retrospec works in trying to create something amazing, like you said, with minimal gear, just the right amount of gear, but also enough that you can make something look just like you brought a full truck and trailer and just
Right.
like you had a full staff of 20 people on set doing something. So
Yeah.
I remember another thing on the road Jason trying to convince Brandon maybe he should join the tournament.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Brandon, what did you say at the time?
No, I wasn't good. Like, I'm not gonna try. And then I think we had talked like maybe it would be an interesting angle for like the behind the scenes. And so I looked, and it was like it had already been sold out, and I was like, okay, good, because I didn't want to be
It
humiliated.
was probably a crazy amount of a buy-in or something.
Oh, I'm
that
sure it was.
They were raising a lot of money, I think. We get there, and I think it was actually the interview.
Yeah, it was
one
all
of the
the-
very
it was-
first things we got.
It was Ninja's interview. Yeah, we went into the room and we had to get it ready, and we were like, "You only have him for 20 minutes or something." Like it was a big deal, having him come in the room.
With these types of events, you have such a small window of time because for Ninja, it's like a press junket where he's going from one interview to another one, to another one, to another one. So it was a challenge for our team to say, okay, we have, I don't remember, like 20 minutes, 15 minutes. You got to make the most of it. So it's everything from like Jason asking just the right questions to get him to maximize that time, or making sure we have full coverage of camera angles and are able to light it so that he's totally ready to just sit down, do the interview, make every minute count, and then he has to go.
Do you want to touch base on kind of like what goes through your head when, like, obviously this is a person that you have to kind of find some common ground with and interview him. Do you want to talk a little about how you find that space?
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember when I was 8 years old and we got an Atari, and I opened with that conversation. I'm kidding.
I think
I can't
you,
remember.
You did
I-
talk about
you did
Halo or
talk-
something.
Well, you talked about like Hightower said, trying to find that connection
Yeah.
point, and like because you got his whole story. We basically like we need to get your whole story in like less than 15 minutes, and
Which
so
is insane.
It's hard to do.
think about. Yeah.
That's a feat in itself.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, it's these kind of situations, obviously, I think as the company has grown and we've had more projects where we're working with celebrities or almost celebrities or important people, the people that surround them, they expect you to have it together. You have to have it together. And it's funny, as much as you might think you know what you're doing, to have it to the level that there are no mistakes, that everything is perfect, that the lighting on the face that isn't there yet is perfect, that the hair light that you're gonna need but don't know if you're gonna need till he gets there is already in place, so all you have to do is flip the switch on. To be reactive to the personality. For me, I've probably interviewed at this point thousands of people in interview settings with cameras, so I feel like I'm really good at it. But every now and then I can get thrown off if somebody's personality is a little wild or crazy, or I can't keep control of it. But, I would say that Ninja, he was a really nice guy, a really authentic, well-spoken person. And that was awesome. That was really reassuring, because I think we can have those stereotypes of what we think a gamer is like, oh, he's going to have no human skills and he's going to be like staring at the ground the whole time, or just things like that aren't really true or fair. He's super dynamic, super energetic, super lively, really, really good story, and was really easy to talk to. And I do think it's one thing that's to my benefit, not that it really matters, but it's funny. Like, I have, directed talent where I should probably be intimidated or afraid of screwing up. But it's funny, I never think about those things usually until it's like after the fact or somebody asks me. And I'm glad, because then sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, like I just naturally default to being myself. And I do put an emphasis on that, because I think when I try to be good, I'm not good. Like when I try to direct good, I don't direct good. I only do well when I'm just myself and I know the goal and I aim at the goal. But yeah, the interview went really smooth. It was nice. It was fluid. I mean, we spent 15 minutes. He was awesome, and I thought it was a great conversation. We got great answers out of him. So that was cool.
Yeah, me being a fair weather gamer, I guess you could say, because I do game. You
fangirled a little?
I fangirled a little. Once I found out who he was, and I'm like, ooh, maybe.
I saw you have him sign your
No,
bear skin.
that didn't happen.
I saw that.
Cut that.
It was like in the
That's off
hallway.
record.
No big deal.
Anyways,
He has it tattooed
he's a very
on him.
charitable man.
Yes. Oh boy.
Sorry, Ninja, you're great.
I don't think Ninja's
Tyler.
watching.
He's probably not.
He'll see this.
We'll just put the hashtag ninja. He'll see
yeah,
it.
we'll tag him.
And so after that interview was like, then he was gone. Like, I mean, I remember we were like, it went over 15 minutes, and like his lady that was running him around was like, I could see her from my camera, and she's like,
Yeah.
and so I'm like kind of like looking to you, like, we gotta like,
Wrap it
we
up.
can't piss these people off. We just got here. And so he left, and then we interviewed his wife and some other people, and then he was practicing. And then the next day was the actual event, and that was pretty crazy, because it was a nightclub that they turned into an esports arena. And so
I think that was one of like the inaugural events in that center.
It's the first time there's ever been an esports event that was centered around one person, but then it was also that first large esports event there. And so, I mean, I don't know if they did a big mural or drop cloth or something, but the entire side of the Luxor had a huge esports thing on it. I mean, it was packed. And so trying to like maneuver around all of that and get interviews amongst all this chaos, and then actually shoot the event. I mean, Hightower had time lapses going. We were shooting Movi. Adam was shooting behind the scenes. We were doing slider interviews, which I think we have some behind the scenes pictures of it. And it's just this crazy, like, huge arena and just people everywhere. And like, we're just like planted in the
Posted
middle.
up in the
Like,
corner.
I mean, yeah, that's what it was, a live event. So you can just imagine even walking around in a live event is hard.
Even just the challenge of where do we put our stuff?
Yeah.
In a hallway, or this corridor that's full of pedestrians and people walking, and how do we get a pretty shot where there's not just some random guy walking in through the middle of the background of the interview? Lots of really cool challenges that we got to, overcome just to even create the product to begin with.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think once again, just to bring it back to that problem-solving aspect, filmmaking really is this constant question of like how far can you push it? How much gear can you use to get the great shot amongst the difficulties and the timer that's always running out on everything you do? And I do think this was a prime example, because, we're roaming around with famous people, we're roaming around with thousands of regular people, ticket holders, and yet we want to shoot it in the best fashion possible. I mean, certainly any news team would have just had a handheld shoulder camera, and they would have had one camera going, but it was like
a porta brace bag.
And exactly. And we wanted to have the slider, and we wanted to have the red, and we wanted to have the multiple camera setup, and, all these different factors to make sure that it was incredible. And those inconveniences, they translate into quality if you're willing to make them. And I think that was definitely one of those times where I think a lot of people would have taken shortcuts, but we didn't take no shortcuts.
No shortcuts.
A lot of
taken.
work.
Yeah. If anything, we took the long road.
I think that there's the bullet point in there. I'm going to make a 30-second comment about it, but I just remember on that trip booking an Airbnb and getting it canceled on me and them not refunding the money.
Hi, and thanks for calling Airbnb.
Yeah, this is the 11th time that I've talked to Airbnb.
If you can't get the message for any reason, just stay on the phone.
Hi, can you hear me, sir?
I can't hear you. We booked 2 houses, and after booking them, they canceled on us. We booked a 3rd house, then they canceled on us, but said we couldn't stay there, yet they were going to keep our money, which I'm pretty sure is called stealing.
And it's not so much like a filmmaking challenge, but it kind of is when right away we knew we had this interview, like one of the very first things. So we know that there's almost like this ticking time bomb of like, we have to make it to this city by this time, because then we'll have enough time to drive here, drop off our stuff, and be able to have enough time to load in, to light it, so that we're not late, because it's the first thing we have to do. So the Airbnb does become a real part of the job, like securing it, because you have to nail down such a specific timeline, especially when you're traveling from like 18 hours away.
Yeah.
And you're asking yourself, well, why don't you just rent a hotel? Well, when you have a giant truck that's full of hundreds of thousands of dollars of camera gear, the last thing you want to do is just park it outside of a hotel. Why wouldn't you rather rent a house where you can either back up the truck to where nobody can get access to it, or you have a garage or a side yard? And so that's why we rent Airbnbs, is that when we're traveling, is so that we can keep everything safe.
Well, I think that, in conclusion, obviously we've always been a company that travels and knows how to maneuver and knows how to be mobile and knows how to respond to, crazy last minute things. But I think beyond that, this was a unique project, and that it really opened our minds up to what we could do, and to not be scared of who we could call, and to not be scared of how big we could go, because it wasn't, following years after that where we really started to get into more entertainment stuff. And it was like, okay, we can do this. Like, we don't have to just get hired to do promotional videos or things like that. And, even though that project never turned into anything, it was still a really cool experience. And it was also kind of interesting, because the entertainment space is weird. They even like put our project on hold because they were like, oh, these other celebrity people are doing something. But did those people ever do anything?
Nothing ever came out.
No, they didn't. So we'll see. Maybe we'll
just do it ourselves. We'll fund it ourselves. We'll shoot it ourselves.
And we'll still put it out. He's not as big as he was back then, but that's all right. So
Now let's get him back. Let's get him back there.
maybe we can help him.
We had fun.
We can help him out, guys.
Maybe he'll come to
Tyler,
us
if
one
you're
day.
watching,
It's Roger.
Retrospec Films.
I know that none of us have blue hair, but we can, if that'll do it for you. All right. Well, that concludes this episode. Appreciate you guys listening in for Retrospec from the archives. And hopefully you catch the next episode. We'll keep digging into cool projects and learning about some of the fun stuff we've had a chance to be a part of. We'll see ya.
Bye. Who wants to go play Rocket League?